Hello guys and welcome to Odds on Serie A third match day. We are going to analyze, of course, all 10 games with our specialist, Dani Fisichella. How are you, Dani?
Ciao Edu, all very well. So we are still in the middle of this international break. There's still one game to go, but at the weekend, there are already two great games in Serie A, two games that could tell us a lot about who could win the title, who could finish in the top four, who's going to be the big surprise of this season. And, I think this round of games, because it comes after the international games, a lot of players coming back from all over the world, there could be surprises.
Yes, and before the start of the Champions League and the Europa League, so the coaches will make a lot of changes. Remember, guys, leave a comment below and give us your tips and your comments about this third match day. And of course, ask any question to Dani in this live video. And don't forget to click on the like and subscribe to our channel and click on the bell to get notifications. So, Dani, let's start. Remember that there are 5 teams who have won all 2 games so far, but these 2 teams, Empoli, Venezia. We are going to start with these 2 newly promoted teams at the Carlo Castellani. Last season was a 1-1 in Empoli, 2-0 victory for Venezia, but the truth is that in this start of the season, Empoli have started way better because, as we know, they were the huge surprise of last match day, beating Juventus 0-1 with Mancuso scoring the winner. Last season, Benevento, for instance, was able to beat Juventus also at home, whereas Venezia, Dani, not great for them. 0 points. They lost against Napoli, something expected, but also this 3-0 defeat against Udinese probably tell us that they will suffer a lot this season.
5 goals conceded for Venezia, none scored, not really many clear-cut chances at Udine. So, very disappointing start for them. But, curiously, as you remember, last year, Empoli stormed the Serie B league. They were, in the end, 14 points ahead of Venezia, who only got promoted thanks to the playoff. But during the regular season, Venezia were unbeaten against Empoli. That was, quite strange for such a powerful team as Empoli in the Serie B. But they lived a very different start to the season. I think Empoli kept most of the block from the Serie B and brought them into Serie A with a couple of addition of experienced players. Obviously, they changed the manager to Andrea Azzoli, who himself has a lot of experience in Serie A already, and obviously great game plan, which worked really well in Torino against Juventus to achieve a historical win. Whereas for Venezia, what we learn is that Paolo Zanetti, the manager, always makes some changes. He changes 7 players from the first game to the second game, and now probably for this game again, gonna make 4 or 5 changes. We might see a start for Ampadu, the Welsh in center midfielder, maybe also Mattia Aramu playing up front. The number 10, little number 10, is going to be so skillful for Venezia. But I think both teams will try to keep hold of the ball. They will try to control the game. These are teams that don't really like to sit back and play out the counter. But who's got the best squad? Who's got the best team? Probably at the moment, Empoli, especially up front, Cutrone, he seems so old, but he's just young. He's still a young player that needs to prove himself. And Mancuso, so they will keep the same formation they work in Turin, 4-2-3-1. As you can see, there are good odds for Empoli to win the game, so why not? You almost double your stake, but they went for one better, Empoli to win the first half, 248.
Cutrone, what a classic also in the Italian football. Then you mentioned that there are 2 games that are going to be very important to see how it's going to develop this Serie A. For sure you were talking about this Napoli-Juventus, especially because Juventus, after 2 match days, is very strange to see them in the bottom half of the table. 1 point only, the one that they got in Udine. Then they mentioned the defeat against Empoli. They lost Cristiano Ronaldo. Luckily for them, their debut in Champions League is going to be easy, supposedly, because they are playing against Malmo. Whereas Napoli, Dani, 2 games, 2 victories. Great start for them, beating Genoa and beating also Venezia. What do you expect here? Napoli is slightly favorite, and this is already something strange.
Maybe because in the last 2 home games at the Maradona, Napoli have won those 1-0 last season, 2-1 the season before. This is going to be a crucial game for Allegri, who cannot afford to lose one. Also because, as you mentioned, then there is Champions League midweek and Milan the next match day at home, and he's already under pressure. Let's say that Juventus have managed the whole Ronaldo situation so badly, they almost been caught off guard and surprised by the fact that the Portuguese wanted to leave. In the end, they brought Moise Kean to replace him. They paid him more than what they sold him 3 years ago to Everton. The whole situation was very, very confused, and the team looked confused against Empoli on the pitch. And I think what shows you that confusion is that Danilo was playing in midfield in front of the back four. Yes, he has played the role before when he's playing in Brazil. Yes, he's done it with Pirlo, but not with great results. And that tells you that Juventus, despite signing Locatelli, who I'm sure is going to be a brilliant signing, and we already saw him in the game of Italy against Switzerland, what he could do. But he's not a regista, he's not a playmaker, and Juventus are struggling in that position because Arthur hasn't imposed himself. Ramsey's been tried in that position during the summer, but now is slightly injured. So Allegri's got a really difficult dilemma to solve. Probably for this game as well, it's very difficult to call because there are a lot of South American players coming back from their trip. For example, Napoli have lost the keeper Meret due to injury, so Ospina, the Colombian, should start in goal. It's a little detail. Ospina plays with his national team on Thursday night, so he needs to fly with a special plane back to Napoli in the early hours of Friday and then be on the pitch on Saturday. I mean, it's quite a task, but it's not just him. Osimhen has been playing with Nigeria. He scored yesterday. His suspension has been reduced, so he'll be on the pitch. Juventus, obviously, they might be without Dybala, Cuadrado. So there are a lot of uncertainties in this game. What we can say is that Napoli have been a touch lucky perhaps against Genoa. I don't think they deserve completely the win. They didn't have a great transfer market. I don't think they strengthened the team enough. If you're still left with Mario Rui as a left back, you probably got a problem. And let's see who starts up front for Juventus, because Kulusevski, for example, has been really positive with Sweden in the international break. Basically, what they need is the hunger, that desire, that Juventus style that perhaps they have forgotten in the last few years. Let's not underestimate Allegri. He can manage the situations very well. I'm not going to call a winner here as too difficult. Over 2.5 goals, 1.96.
I was going to tell you, after all this bad news for Juventus, probably the positive one is that Allegri is on the bench and he's a very experienced manager and he knows what to do with his Juventus. Very interesting, this Napoli-Juve. Also, the last one on Saturday, Atalanta-Fiorentina. 4 points for Atalanta, but probably not the start of the season that we expected from Gasperini's men. They were very lucky with that victory against Torino in the opening game. They drew at home 0-0 against Bologna. They also have Champions League. They are facing Villarreal on Tuesday. Whereas for Fiorentina, Dani, 3 points. Also, the victory against Torino. The good news is that Vlahovic is still in the team, and actually he scored in that game. And we know that they lost in the opening game of the season at the Olimpico, but they didn't play that bad, actually.
No, absolutely. And these are two teams that I think they've strengthened themselves a lot during the transfer market. A masterstroke from Atalanta. They've done it again. They've sold El Cuti Romero, and they brought in good players, good talents. Koppenmeyers, I think, what a coup at the end of the transfer windows from AZ Alkmaar. And he's a young player under Gasperini, can really flourish. And then they got Demiral. Not a great international break for him, but again, young player that can flourish. Also, they have other options. Zappacosta being brought back again. I think could be a team that they could challenge for the title. And I think this game is going to tell us how much they could challenge for the title. Because let's not forget, Atalanta, they often finish the season very strongly. But what holds them back, especially when they've been playing in Europe, is the fact that they start slowly, especially when they have midweek games. And, the rotation, the pressure of the travel, they always drop point. They sometimes drop point. And they did it against Bologna at home, 0-0. I didn't expect that. And they lack the clear-cut chances. Now, for this game, Muriel and Zapata are in doubt, one for injuries, one because after a long travel. They still be without Gosens, who's basically one of the main threats there on the left-hand side. Let's not forget they go to Villarreal midweek, and they face a Fiorentina that had a very positive summer because, as you mentioned, they kept hold of the big players, Vlahovic, the defender.
No, Ribéry.
No, the Serbian defender, Milenkovic, of course. And they brought in Nico Gonzalez. Nico Gonzalez from Stuttgart, transfer record, scored the last game, very useful as well when he played against Roma, can play on both sides of the attack. Will he play? We don't know because he's coming back from international break. But again, he's already a star in Florence. Dragowski, the keeper, is back from suspension. And Torreira, another great coup, out of favor at Arsenal, inexplicably, really. Don't they need someone with a little bit of character, a little bit of strength there in midfield? But Fiorentina has him. He can provide short passes, long passes, set the tempos, was brilliant at Sampdoria. Fiorentina has an handicap, +1 to 10.
Yeah, actually, we were also flagging Fiorentina double chance, 2.64 in case they get a point. Atalanta, Danny, they are still third favorites to win the title. You mentioned before, odds 7.0. Juventus still favorite. Of course, we just started the season. Odds 2.85.
The odds are getting higher for Juventus because I checked them. They started below 2 and now are over 2.5,
Yeah, of course, if they continue dropping points, and the current champions is Inter Milan, and they had a great start of the season. Of course, they were able to thrust Genoa, to beat Verona, which is not easy when you are playing at the Bentegodi with Correa scoring. And now they have to travel to Genoa. Dani, is not also easy to play Sampdoria. They know it well because last season they lost, actually, 2-1 against the team trained by them for Ranieri. Sampdoria, a slow start for them, only 1 point, but also they had a tough calendar. Sassuolo and Milan, no goals scored, only 1 goal conceded.
It was a really tricky game last year. I remember 6th of January after the break, Inter went to Marassi. And, they were put under pressure a lot, especially because Sampdoria back then and this year, because it's pretty much the same formation, is a physical team, skillful, lot of people that can run in behind the back three of Inter and stretch them, and then a technical player in the middle of the pitch like Damsgaard who can pull the string, hit the passes, hit the shot. So Inter needs to be really, really careful. Also because now Sampdoria, they brought in the last day of the transfer market Ciccio Caputo from Sassuolo. What a cult hero is. Mobile attacker, very skillful, again, can run in behind. I think he can form a very good partnership with Quagliarella and not give many references to the three defenders of Inter. They can exchange position a lot. Plus, Sampdoria has got other options on the bench that they can bring in. So Inter needs to be really, really careful. I know Sampdoria, it's not a team that scores many goals. Basically, they need to create a lot of chances to score goals, which sometimes Inter doesn't allow teams to do. But, it's the beginning of the season, and also Inter will be without Lautaro and Correa, because again, they're coming back from South America, so they'll be late Friday morning. They'll be on the bench. And then you look at the other key players, Brozovic, Çalhanoğlu, Dzeko, De Vrij, Skriniar. They all been heavily involved in all the qualifiers with the national teams. Most of them have played 3 games, the full 90 minutes. So they're going to be obviously a little bit tired. Next Wednesday, there is a small matter of Inter Real Madrid in the Champions League, first game. So again, Simone Inzaghi has got that in his mind as well. He needs a good start in Champions League. Basically, what I'm saying is they're going to make changes to the formation. Don't be surprised if you see someone like Gagliardini starting, maybe even Ranocchia at centre-back. D'Ambrosio. So there could be a lot of changes there. Maybe we could see a debut from the first minute from Denzel Dumfries, who's been so positive with the Netherlands. But as David points it out, Inter dropping points. Well, David, it could be, but my bet would be first half draw, 245.
Yeah, it's a good option actually after everything you said, Danny. Inter dropping points, as David is also saying, as it happened last season. Our next game is quite tricky. Cagliari Genoa in the Sardinia Stadium. Not a good start for these teams. Cagliari 1 point after the draw against Spezia, with João Pedro scoring both goals, and they were thrashed by Milan, whereas Genoa 0 points so far. It's true that they faced Napoli and Inter, so they should bounce back, Danny, I guess, and at least get something out of Sardinia.
Cagliari look fragile this year. Against Spezia, home, conceded 2 goals, pretty much the same, left a lot of space on the wing, and then, yes, they got it back in the second half, but they lack that kind of solidity that was shown in the latter part of last season, again, under Semplici, the same manager, which got them saved. Against Milan, they were out of the game too early. They didn't lay a glove on them. In the end, it was a 4-1 easy win for Milan. But for this one, obviously, they'll try to bounce back, and they find a team that perhaps could be a good match for them. They'll both will go out with a 3-5-2 formation. But of the two, if I look especially at the players they brought in the very last day of the market, Genoa, out of a sudden, looks stronger. Caicedo from Lazio, I think is a player that he could have gone in many top teams to be a substitute, but actually went to Genoa. So that's a good cope for Genoa. Fares from Lazio, Maximovic used to play for Napoli. Again, experienced player with a lot of years in Serie A. Plus, you have to add the eternal Pandev. Destro, in the end, hasn't gone anywhere, and he was still the top scorer last year. They got a very interesting midfielder in Rovella, players like Sturaro and Criscito, again, experience, Sirigu in goal. They were unlucky to lose against Napoli. They got a goal disallowed that I think it should have stood. In the end, they lost with a goal from Petagna in the last few minutes. I think they deserved a point. And again, as I said, they seem stronger out of a sudden. And I think Ballardini showed us last year that he can make this team very hard to beat. Genoa to score first, 240.
Then you place Genoa as favorites here, and we have good odds if someone wants to back Genoa, because surprisingly, Cagliari is favorite in this game, 2.15. Then our next game, Spezia Udinese. We said at the beginning of the season, Danny, that the Spezia, they might suffer this season. Well, they were completely smashed by Lazio. 6-1 in the last game. As we just mentioned, they got a draw against Cagliari, but again, 8 goals conceded in only 2 games, whereas Udinese, Danny, on the contrary, 4 points for them. We always pointed that they have troubles scoring, but they scored 2 against Juve, they scored 3 against Venezia, and surprisingly, Deulofeu scored in both games. So, of course, the odds, as we can see now, Udinese favorite.
So this is the first time Spezia play at home this season after 2 games away, and they play Udinese, who travels for the first time after 2 home games. So again, this is important because we're going to assess the form of this team in different situations. With Spezia, with so many changes, so many players coming and going on loan this summer, I always wonder, do they have the right players to play the kind of football that Thiago Motta wants? Pressing high, at the same time keeping the possession. I wonder if that team was more set to play the way Italiano was playing last season. But never mind, we'll have a look. I mean, I'm still amazed by the fact that Balanzola is not in the team. The manager doesn't like him, so they go with an attack of 3 small players. Yazzi and Verde are obviously the key players there. Interesting that they got a good midfielders, a good organizers of the game. Burabia from Sassuolo in the last minute, pretty much on the last day, so they can deploy Bastoni back and left back when he's more comfortable. So they try to perhaps have a more solid defense, which held them a lot last season. They conceded 6 at the Stadio Olimpico. Udinese, as you mentioned, that could be the season of Deulofeu. I mean, if he continues that way, such a skillful player, a player that is quite mercurial, when he's in form, he really can make a difference. The problem is that sometimes he doesn't turn up, but he did for the first 2 games of the season. Now they play away for the first time. Let's not forget, last season they were not really impressive away from home, because the problem with Udinese, they always lacked in the first couple of the years a goal scorer, a poacher, someone that creates a goal out of nothing. They tried with Okaka, they tried with Llorente, now they're trying again with Pussetto. These are players that struggle to go in double figures. However, this could be an open game, again, because comes after the international break. I think the surprise could be there. Over 2.5 goals, 196.
I lost my faith on Deulofeu, but let's see, maybe Udine is his place. And then Torino Salernitana, 0 points for both teams. Torino repeating the mistakes of last season when they suffered, remember, a lot to play again in Serie A. They lost against strong rivals like Atalanta and Fiorentina, whereas Salernitana, in the random transfer market news, Danny, they got Frank Ribéry. There were even rumors to get David Luiz. Finally, David Luiz is not arriving to the south of Italy, but Ribéry, yes, also 0 points for them. Not the best comeback for sure to the Serie A.
Well, Ribéry is being welcomed like Maradona at the Stadio Areghi, 10,000 people coming on the pitch, doing a bit of a keepy-ups, a bit, with a scarf. And I mean, what a great atmosphere. I would have loved to be in Salerno that day to see it. And, credit to Ribéry. He could have gone anywhere in the world. He's a Champions League winner. He decided to go and fight for the relegation with Salernitana, with Castori's man. I mean, he's a player that played 50 games in the last 2 years for Fiorentina, 5 goals, not many, no great contribution, a few assists more. Let's see what his mindset is, because they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle this season. Comes December, comes January, when they might have 8 points, 9 points, the Ribéry effect might have already faded out. Let's see how they are. However, I think Salernitana did a good transfer market. They strengthened the teams with a couple of loans, keeping the 3-5-2 formation. Ruggeri on one side from Atalanta. Interesting bite. Kekida from the other side, again, a young players. They're probably more with defensive task. And I'm really impressed by the fact they got Simi from Crotone, the Cameroonian. Last year he scored 20 goals, a couple of penalties as well, but that was Crotone, the bottom team of the league. Again, another one like Caicedo. I don't quite understand why a bigger team didn't go for him. It could have been an excellent substitute. But for this trip to Torino, they find a Torino team that is under pressure, because they got a new manager, Juric, who was already upset against his president for not bringing enough quality in the transfer market. Urbano Cairo satisfied him in the end. He got Pobega. Goodbye. Played for Spezia last year, was very useful. Pride, I think, is a good player, although Leicester let him go. Brecalo, the Croatian, so they got more quality. There is more strength in that team. Will these 3 players start? I'm not sure, but I think they're gonna make a difference too Torino season, because the task in hand for Juric is important. He needs to convert Torino from a team that plays on the counter-attack, that used to do it for the last 2-3 years with a small parenthesis with Marco Giampaolo, into a team that dominates the game and impose themselves. Good news for Torino is that Belotti is semi-rested. He hasn't played much with the national team. I see them favorite despite the Ribéry effect. Asian handicap, -1 for Torino, 205. Little explainer for who doesn't know what the Asian handicap is. If Torino wins with 2 goals margin, you win the stake. If they win with 1 goal margin, you don't lose the stake. If they draw, you lost.
After so many years in Munich, Ribéry can enjoy the sun of the south of Italy. Costiera Amalfitana is close, Capri is close. He has a boat, a yacht nearby, so there are some things to enjoy in Salerno. It's not a bad place to live, of course. Then let's stay in the north of Italy. Milan Lazio also important, Danny, to see if these teams are going to be title contenders, because the bookies don't expect that. But I guess there is some hope in the capital, whereas if you are a Lazio supporter or a Roma supporter, maybe this year they can challenge the title. These two teams, they have won both games. Great start for Pioli again. Thrash Cagliari, beat also Sampdoria. Remember that they are playing Liverpool in their comeback to the Champions League. I will be very happy to see that game. Whereas Lazio, also, Danny, very, very entertaining with Sarri on the bench, 9 goals in only 2 games.
Great game. This is the second big game of this weekend. Milan with Ibrahimovic. This time he recovered from the injury, so he'll start. And we know how important the presence of the Swede has been for the last year and a half. He can really lift up the environment. But this is an environment that is already excited. It's already been lifted by such a good start of the season. And, many were thinking, is Milan better than last season? If you look at the transfers they did, they're pretty much there or thereabout. They haven't spent a lot. They actually lost Donnarumma and Çalhanoğlu on a free. But I think the difference this year is this team is more confident. They played 1 year together. They kept the same manager, one of the few top teams in Italy to keep the manager. And they got a stronger belief that they have been last year top of the league for over 16, 17 rounds. So they have got a stronger belief that they can challenge with the best. Also because this year, the league, it's more open than ever because of everything we mentioned so far. And also for Milan, the last game at home, I know it was Cagliari, but let's not forget last year, Milan at home were so flat, they were so weak, they lost so many points. I think in the end they only collected 30 points, so that shows you that 4-1 win, which was very comfortable, they got more confident. Kessié will probably be back for this game. I'm not sure he's going to stay that long in Milan because there is a certain PSG who wants him, so they might steal him again at the end of his contract. So that could go through his mind. It's very difficult for Milan to compete with such a power like PSG. But for this game, they face a Lazio team who also had a very good transfer window. I think, they didn't sell the best players. Milinkovic-Savic is still there. Obviously, Immobile is still there. Luis Alberto is there. Yes, they let Correa go, but they brought players that are more functional to the way Sarri plays. For example, Pedro, who can play on the left-hand side, can play as a false 9. Felipe Anderson is great on the wing. They got Zaccagni from Verona in the very last day of the transfer market. I think he was tipped as being one of the best players, at least for the last year and a half in Serie A. So that was a good buy. And, they still got the Kosovarian Muriqi. He scores a lot with the national team, not so much with Lazio. They brought him last year for 17 million. It's something different from Immobile, but could this be his season? I can see for a team like this, having 2 weeks rest is an advantage because they could assimilate and learn Sarri's philosophy a little bit more. Obviously, the players who stayed in Rome to train, they are without Lazzari for this one, so that's a bit of a concern there at the right back. Open game, both to score, doesn't pay much, but check both to score in the second half, and out of a sudden, bigger odds. Both to score in the second half, just like last year, who finished 3-2, 272.
Immobile, 4 goals in these 2 games. He's been criticized by Cassano, for instance.
Let's open a parenthesis. Who Cassano hasn't criticized? He doesn't like Barella. He doesn't like Lukaku. He doesn't like someone else. Doesn't like him. Who does he actually like? I don't get it. Doesn't like Jorginho, by the way. Doesn't like Jorginho.
Next game. When Cassano speaks, is always fun. Next game is one of Cassano's teams, Roma. Sassuolo, very interesting game as well. Last season, this team drew actually both games. Perfect start for the special one in Roma. 0-4 against Salernitana. We said, no, it's going to be a close game. Roma is going to wrap up the game, but they are going to suffer. No, 0-4. And the best news is that Abraham already scored for them. Very 2-3 goals. So everything is very positive for the Giallorossi. But they have a good test here now, Danny, with Sassuolo. 4 points also not a bad start at all for them, drawing against Sampdoria and beating Verona on the road. What do you expect here?
A close game, because, let's not forget, last year, Roma and Sassuolo were very close together. I mean, Roma edged past Sassuolo in the very last day of Serie A to qualify for the conference league, I think that's called conference league. It's a new competition. I was almost saying Cup Winners' Cup, but anyway, Roma impressive start because they create chances. They seem ruthless. They take the chances as well, and also when they travel to Stadio Reggi, they were by far the best team. Let's see how much the Mourinho effect lasts, how much he has reinvigorated the team. Let's not forget, this was the biggest spender in Serie A this season. So they have strengthened the team with Tammy Abraham above all. Little problem for Roma this week. They are without a left back because Spinazzola, we know, is injured. Vigna, the Uruguayan, picked up an injury with his national team, so it's the young Calafiori who needs to start. But they got a lot of options also up front. Interesting to see if Shomudoro and Abraham can play together. There is also Borja Mayoral. There is also Sharawi. And, again, Mourinho can change the formation if he wants to. He can drop Lorenzo Pellegrini into midfield to leave more space for Zaniolo, maybe for another attacking player. So it's about how Mourinho manages the situation, and especially so far it seems that Roma, when they scored the first one, they didn't sit back and defend, but they went for the second one. However, Sassuolo, interesting also under Udinese, a little bit underwhelming against Sampdoria, 0-0. I didn't expect that. I expected many more goals. They didn't create the clear-cut chance. But for this one, they get Berardi back, not because he was injured, only because they thought they were going to sell him. So they didn't play in the first two games. Probably your best players. Not a great idea, maybe. But actually, Berardi stayed there. So he will try to recover from the so-so performance he's done so far with the national team in this international break. They got a lot of hopes on Raspadori from the young striker. They also got Scamacca, who last year did well with Genoa. And, then the most interesting part of the team is the midfielder. Frattesi and Maxim Lopez, two small players, very good on the ball. They will give Veretout and whoever plays alongside in midfield a good run for the money. Someone, Lyle, I think, was looking for value on this game. Roma to score in both halves, as they've done against Fiorentina, as they've done against Salernitana, 2.10.
Yeah, Lyle was in Roma to score in both halves. Roma will be my banker, just trying to see where is the value. So you just mentioned where the value is in this game at the Olimpico, and our last game is at the Renato Dallara, Bologna, Verona, two teams that started the season completely different. Bologna, 4 points after being knocked out of the Coppa Italia. They were surprisingly able to take a draw against Atalanta, and as we know, they beat Salernitana in the opening game. For Verona, Dani, 2 defeats. What do you expect here?
Well, before I drop my microphone, yeah, Bologna, Verona, the Monday night. I mean, all right, try to big the game up a bit. I think both teams they lost quite a lot in the last few days of transfer. Tomiyasu from Bologna to Arsenal. They lose a very good defender. They lost one of the best players in the last 2 years. And Zaccagni, as I mentioned, from Verona to Lazio. However, Bologna maintain a very creative very creative team up front, lots of options. Arnautovic is already showing why they brought him in. He's important, someone who holds the ball, open the space, scores you goals, something that Bologna didn't have in the last 2-3 years. They had to play with Palacio up front, not really his role. I'm really interested to see on this home game how Orsolini and Sansone benefit from having Arnautovic, how much space they're going to have. Both they're going to start from the first minute. The concern with Bologna is the defense, old, and maybe protected by a midfield that is not really experienced. Although Skov Olsen is playing a bit more with Denmark, so it could be a good prospect there. But the centre back with Medel, Yes, they brought Bonifazi. They got the Silvestri, great in the air, scored 2 goals against Salernitana. But again, he's on the old side. So as the season progresses, Mihajlovic will have to rotate them quite a lot. With Verona, they lost against Inter. They took the lead thanks to an Inter mistake. They were okay for 25-30 games while the game was a slow pace. Then they lost control of the midfield and they surrendered the lead, and Inter won comfortably. The good news for Di Francesco is that Miguel Veloso is back. Very important player in the last 3 or 4 games because he's the player that makes them tick, that set the tempo in midfield. But let's forget about this for a moment and think how much is Di Francesco able to impose his own style of ball possession on a team that was set up by Juric for being physical, pressing up high, going long, going direct. That's how Verona plays. So let's see if they're still in transition. Is a team that sometimes I think when they tire out, because they lack a bit of quality, when they tire out in the second half, they seem to concede, and they've done it in both games so far this season. They also lack a goal scorer. For this reason, Bologna to win, good odd, you could go for it. But I'm going to go on one better. Bologna to win the second half, because I think Verona in the second half sometimes drop backs too deep. 248. Bologna to win the second half.
Arnautovic, for sure, he's not going to be very happy after the performance of Austria in this international break. And thanks also to Thomas Tuchel, who is with us, also following our videos. Tomorrow we have great manager, and tomorrow we have the Premier League with Tom Rennie, just in 25 hours exactly. So you can follow Tom tips about Chelsea. Danny, but we are with Serie A. And you have analyzed absolutely everything of this third match day. Only thing missing is your ACCA, and for those who are new, we have to say that Danny nailed his ACCA last season quite a few times.
Couple of times, and the ACCA on the World Cup qualifiers is still alive. Go and check the video. If you haven't put a bet, why not? Napoli Juventus, both to score. Cagliari Genoa, over 1.5 goals. Torino to win against Salernitana. Milan Lazio, over 2.5 goals. Bologna to take the lead against Verona on the Monday night. Total odds 11.69.
All right, we will write the ACCA in the description as always. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, guys, for being with us. Still, please leave a comment in the video. We want to listen your tips or your comments for Danny's tips. And don't forget to click on the like and subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications. Danny, next week we have Champions League, we have Europa League, we have Serie A. So football is on, and we will see again next week. Thanks, Danny. See you.
Best week.